I've had a hell of a day, by the way, Don. I'm White House yesterday. At Amtrak today, there's all kinds of crazy train delays.
Did you get to meet the president?
I did not, but I took a picture with a picture of the president and vice president. So,
who ran point on this whole thing then?
It was the Office of Gun Violence Prevention.
Okay.
It was White House adjacent. I'll explain later. It was the definition. Frank, you ever been? Have you ever been next door to the White House, Frank, or inside?
Hi, Frank.
Pretty interesting. A couple of things. Number one, did you take the Isola or the?
Oh, I'm so glad. God, you know what, Frank? I love you, you handsome SOB. You know why? Because I say this to everybody who asks me this. Everyone says to me, "Did you take the Isola?" Hell no, I don't take the Isola. It is the biggest ripoff in travel today. It can be sometimes as much, Frank, as 150 more. Do you know how much shorter it is to take the Isola?
It's only like 20 minutes, right? Or a half
20 to 30 minutes faster. I'm not doing that for $200.
If it's on somebody else's dime, then I take the Isola. But
well, the president didn't pay for me, so
then that's your problem.
No, but it's not worth it if it's out of your own pocket.
No,
it's not.
Agree.
Frank, what do you think, Frank?
No, I think you're right, and I take it because it's not out of my pocket. A couple of things. They have a great car on there.
Oh, really?
It's the quiet car.
They have a quiet car. They have a quiet car on the Jabroni train too.
Yeah, but in this one, no one's allowed. You're not allowed on your cell phone. And if you get the right conductor, he comes through there, and he starts admonishing people who are talking. So the one time I took it with my wife, and she kept trying to talk to me, and I would look at her and point to the sign. I can't talk.
You know what? By the way,
I follow the rules.
You know what that is? That's Diary of a Handsome Man. Only a handsome man can do that to his wife. That's Diary of a Handsome Man. Go ahead, Frank.
Let me give you a little White House talk. So I at the WNBA draft, I did it for Sirius, and Sonia Curry was there. So I know Sonia Curry because of her son's dad, talking to her. She says, "Let me introduce you to my friends." Her friends happen to be the Brink family. Cameron Brink's mother and father. Sonia was Cameron Brink's mom's roommate in college, and the two husbands were teammates at Virginia Tech. So Cameron Brink's mom, who, by the way, is from upstate New York, they introduced me to their son, young guy. He's like 6'8" too. The kid's a monster. He is one of the speechwriters at the White House.
Oh, wow.
Could not have been a nicer guy. So when I went down to he's a big fan of all the shows. So I tell him, hey, next time I'm in D.C., filling in on PTI, would you like to come to the studio? He says, of course he would. So I bring him over there. We take pictures. And as he's leaving, we spent the day together. He says, Frank, have you ever been to the White House? I said, finally, here it comes. And I said, believe it or not, no, I've never been invited. Though, I don't care what, Democrat or Republican, these people have the audacity never to invite
Maryland alum Frank Isola.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so he then said, well, the next time you're here, I'll take you to the White House. So there you go. Hopefully I'll get there at some point this summer.
Wow, that was a long setup to say you didn't ever go still.
I'm sorry.
All right, now listen,
I did a couple of name drops.
So I enjoyed that. But before you go, I have one more thing about the train that I need to tell you. But let's dive into the basketball of it all. We're hearing the things that we're hearing today about OG Anunoby, what it could cost for the Knicks to keep OG. First thing I want to ask you, is there a line for... obviously, there's some line where the Knicks will not go further in terms of what they're willing to pay OG. Where do you imagine that line would be?
It's a tough one because, his son, Leon Rose's son, represent him. There's a whole connection there. But also, my only hesitation about OG Anunoby would be his history of injuries. Remember when Toronto won the championship, he was unavailable. Now they won without him. And obviously you see the impact that he has when he plays. I think if he had been available against Indiana, I think the Knicks would have ended up beating Indiana. I think they go to the conference finals, and then who knows what happens. So I definitely think he has value. I think this is a guy that, when you trade for a guy like that, you don't necessarily let him walk. I think right now it's just a lot of talk. I think that OG Anunoby will be back with the Knicks, and he provides something that they need from that position. He could shoot and he could defend multiple positions on the court. I think he's going to be back. I understand what you're saying. I think he's going to be on the Knicks now.
Now, do you believe my theory that the Knicks are the second best team in the conference and the Celtics are the one team they're going to have to try to get over, or do you think some other teams will be a problem for New York?
Well, Miami's always going to be tough, and I think that, Jimmy Butler had a really poor season this year. And also remember, too, the last 2 years with the Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis has been hurt in the playoffs. I think, in fact, he's only played, 2 games? The last 2 years, that was last year. In fact, they didn't win a game. Giannis hasn't been on the court for a win in 2 full seasons now. So I still think Milwaukee, who did give the Knicks some problems, Damian Lillard doesn't worry me too much. But I think the one thing you saw during the Knicks series, and I think I do the radio show with Brian Scalabrine, and he had said this before the playoffs began, he thought that the one team that would really give the Celtics problems would be the Knicks, because he felt their mental and physical toughness would be a big-time challenge for the Boston Celtics. And if you look at what happened to Boston, and to their credit, you finish with the best record in the Eastern Conference, you're going to get breaks. So they didn't play Jimmy Butler in the first round. That's obviously not the Celtics' problem. And then, Donovan Mitchell didn't play the last 2 games of the series. Neither did Tyrese Halliburton. So they caught a couple of breaks. But I think you also look at how good they were against a team like Dallas. And now that they've won, you know how it is. You win a championship, you just carry yourself differently. Your confidence level is different, and Tatum and Brown are outstanding. But let's remember, you look at Kyrie and Luka Doncic. Imagine if Luka and Kyrie Irving as the next 3 guys in their starting lineup for Derek White, Drew Holiday, and Al Horford. You would think about them a little bit different, too. So Boston has a good thing going. I would think rightfully so going into the season. They're going to be the favorite. Denver is, I think, still a great team. So Boston also caught a break there with Minnesota, knocked them out. But to go a long way to answer your question, I do think that the Knicks right there with Milwaukee and with Miami would challenge for the second best record. I don't like Philadelphia. I still don't believe in them because I know Joel Embiid's a great player, but to me, he's always hurt in big moments, always a little out of shape. I'm not too worried about him.
Am I being a Celtic fanboy to believe that once they get this Tatum deal done, presumably in the next couple of days, and this core is locked in for a while, that if you're a Lakers fan, if you're my buddy Ty Butler, one of the many Laker fans that I know, this championship lead might get to 19 or 20 before the Lakers get to 18? Do you think that's a reach for me to feel that way?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, look at the age of both Brown and Tatum, and you would know this by being a Celtic fan. The biggest difference, I think, between those 2 guys this year, even opposed to last year, it's that they became playmakers. Look at the game that Jason Tatum had. Was it game 1 or game 2 when he had the 12 assists? I think it was game 1. And I just think he was making plays that maybe a year ago he would have just taken a bad shot. Now he makes that extra pass, and maybe the addition of Drew Holiday has a lot to do with that, because Drew Holiday is a selfless player. He's a great leader. He's a great role player. Doesn't care about scoring. He just wants to win. And I think, yesterday, I think they combined for 17 assists, Brown and Tatum did. And I think if they're going to play like that, it's only going to make them that much tougher to beat. And I think, and Brown, you know this, Peter, this idea of talking about I don't get respect. Well, last year the media did vote you to the All-NBA team, which allowed him to get the $300 million contract he got. And now he's an Eastern Conference Finals MVP. He's a Finals MVP. The media votes on that. So I think that part that he kind of always went down that road, there's no need to do that. I think Jaylen Brown now realizes and should realize that he's considered one of the top players in the league. He carries himself like that. He plays like that. So I kind of agree with you. I think if you're looking to add banners, I think you'll see them in TD Garden before you see them in Crypto.com arena, that's for sure.
We're talking to Frank Isola from Yes here on the Michael K. Show.
The handsome.
The handsome. I'm
Frank
sorry.
Isola,
I thought it went without saying.
No. It's radio.
The people on Yes can see the picture.
Right,
but
they
for
know.
the people on radio that don't know, you're missing out. If the Knicks run it back, which I think they will, is that enough to close the gap, or do you think they have to do something else?
What's funny about that? I think sometimes, teams fall into this situation where they overreact to losing, and I think a perfect example of that would be the Milwaukee Bucks. They got rid of their coach, and then they made the big mistake of trading Drew Holiday to Damian Lillard. And then I think there are other teams that you sometimes overreact to success, and that isn't always the best thing. Maybe Denver was kind of a case to that because their bench got worse, I thought, after they won a championship. So I think the Knicks, you do have to be realistic about it, how everything turned out. And, they have a lot of good role players. Say like a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein, who was really good to them. I got a feeling, like if he would have priced himself out of the market, which I'm not sure that's going to happen, But I think like the Knicks are so good in terms of developing players and finding players. Maybe this is something, or this wasn't something that they did, for basically 20 years. I think they'll be able to find guys like that. So, yeah, in some ways you want to run it back. But even with a guy like Julius Randle, if there was a trade out there that would include him, I don't think they should hesitate to do that. So I think when you want to win, you got to be aggressive and make smart moves. And I think Brad Stevens is a perfect example of that. They kept their core together, but trading Marcus Smart, getting Porzingis, and then, of course, the home run trade was the one for Jrue Holiday. So making those kind of adjustments could help a team like this, I think. Absolutely.
Even though they're different positions, could you argue, and let me say there's a difference already in that Boston adored. Trust me, Don, Michael.
And I loved him too. I love Marcus Smart.
But here's the comp. So, listen, I bought a Marcus Smart jersey. The only new Celtics jersey I own, newer than Reggie Lewis, is Marcus Smart. Okay, but they were willing to trade him, even though he was a core guy. I have said before, and I don't know if you agree, that Julius Randle, while he didn't play at the end of the season, he is culturally, in terms of the sort of lunch pail to work every day kind of player. He kind of is the mentality of this team. But could that be the same kind of thing where you have to move someone like Randle, and even though it hurts the fans and the team to do it, maybe that's the piece you move to take that next step forward?
No, I think you're right. I think you've seen throughout history, trades like that, happen a lot of times where you get rid of some guy that's been a part of it, but in order to take that next step. And again, I think the Knicks are smart about this stuff. I think they know they got a taste of what could be, and I think the disappointing part was all those guys being hurt and not being able to beat Indiana. I thought the Knicks were better than Indiana, but I think you're right. Sometimes, and that's why it comes down to management. Sometimes having the guts to make a move like that. And Brad Stevens really rolled the dice. Because remember when Boston made the trade for Marcus Smart, and, they didn't know about the Damian Lillard situation yet, but really the big knock on Boston right there was, well, where's your toughness going to come from? Who's going to be your defensive guy? And then what happens? They end up getting Jrue Holiday, and all due respect to Marcus Smart. I agree with you. I love him. I still love him as a player. I love everything about him. But Jrue Holiday's a better player. And I think, Boston willing to take that, leap of faith. And I think the Knicks have to be in that same department. Because right now, you don't know how long it's going to be with, Brunson and some of these guys that they have. These opportunities don't always come along very often. You don't always get back to a Game 7 of the second round. You're one win away from finally going to a conference final. So right now for the Knicks, now's the time to be aggressive. And let's face it, they have the assets to do that.
Do you think Danny Hurley did the right thing staying at UConn?
Yeah, I always felt like he was going to stay there. I just think, you guys would know this. When you're from the East Coast, he's born in Jersey City, went to high school there, worked in Newark, then got his first job on Staten Island, went to Rhode Island. At 51, all of a sudden you're going to get up and you're going to move to your first NBA job is going to be the Lakers with a 40-year-old LeBron. I don't know. I never believed he was going to do that. I think for the Lakers it was smart. I don't think for Danny Hurley. I think what Danny Hurley did was he told teams like Boston, not that job's available, or the Knicks or the Nets or Philadelphia, maybe even Washington, that, hey, you know what? I'd be willing to stay somewhere on the East Coast for an NBA job. I think he will coach in the NBA within 5 years, but I don't think the Laker job was right for him. And if the money were nuts, maybe he would have taken it. I guess he did kind of say that. But my boy Scalabrini's been saying for 2 years that the best coach not in the NBA is Danny Hurley, and apparently the Lakers felt that way as well.
You think that NBA job might be the Knicks down the road?
3-4 years down the road, maybe. But, Tom, I know this about Tom Thibodeau, as you guys know. He's addicted to coaching. So it's not like Tom's thinking, maybe I'll coach a few more years, and that'll be it for me. And I think Tom did such a great job this year, and I think you look at player development, we all love Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson didn't score like this when he was on Dallas. Look at what's happened to Julius Randle since coming to the Knicks. Look at really what's happened to all those guys. You look at the players that everybody fell in love with. Josh Hart's on his 5th team. Dante DiVincenzo is on his 4th team. So all these, everyone wanted to give Jay Wright credit, and Jay Wright's done a good job. But where was all the Villanova culture when these guys were playing for their 3rd and 4th team? It was, Tom brought a lot of this stuff out. So, it's something for the Knicks to focus on, but I don't think Tom's going anywhere anytime soon.
Last thing I got for you is unrelated to the Celtics or the Knicks, but the Mavericks. I got to tell you, man, no one hears this part, Everyone only seems to hear when there's a negative part, and if you're the kind of person who then gives credit when credit is due, I don't think anyone ever hears that, but I'm going to do it anyway, and we've been doing it the last couple of weeks. What immense joy I got out of watching Kyrie Irving in this playoffs. Obviously on the floor it was hit or miss in the finals. No one was particularly good in the final, but throughout the playoffs he obviously certainly had his moments. But Frank, the guy that he was to that team, how he carried himself, even yesterday as the confetti was coming down and he was waiting for every player and staff member on that team. What did you make of sort of the transformation of Kyrie Irving this year, like in terms of the guy he is in the locker room, and what do you attribute it to?
We talked a lot on the show the last few years on the radio show about Kyrie Irving, and a lot of it was, we were critical of him because not so much, forget about like what he believes in and what he says. Like, to me, it always impacted basketball. And a lot of this stuff always led to Kyrie missing games. And that was a big issue for me. And you had the word, you said joy. This year we found ourselves praising Kyrie all throughout the year. And it looked like he was happy. And that's, I got nothing against Kyrie Irving. You want the guy to be happy. And I think that we discovered the joy of the game. And make no mistake about it, I thought he had a terrific year. I think when he came to the finals, I always felt, before the finals started, he addressed the whole situation with Boston and his time there and the fans. It was almost as if he had come to peace with it, and he was hoping, maybe against hope, that the fans weren't going to go after him. I was up there for games 1 and 2. I didn't think the vitriol was as nasty as it was when he went up there, maybe the first few times with the Brooklyn Nets, or maybe a bunch of times with the Brooklyn Nets, because it was the finals. I think people were kind of focused on that. He really struggled up there, and I think the fans do get to him up there, which, listen, the fans are allowed to boo. And if the fans think that they're getting to a player, that there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's not out of bounds what they're saying. But I think overall, I think you're right. I think he and Luka Doncic formed a really good partnership. I think they needed one more guy. And, we're going to give Brown and Tatum, I said this before, all the praise, and they deserve it. Look at their 3 other starters. Those guys are brilliant players. And Dallas doesn't have that. P.J. Washington, Daniel Gafford, and combination of Derek Lively are really good. Derek Jones Jr. is good, but they're not Holiday, Derek White, and Al Horford. Tim Porzingis coming off the bench.
God bless him. He was a great guy when he was here. Tim Hardaway Jr. is not getting off the bench on the Celtics. The Mavericks do not have a lot beyond those top 2 guys. And I just thought it was so interesting and great. You just feel like Kyrie, when he was here, you imagine that if Luka Doncic was his teammate then and had one of those terrible moments, you just kind of imagine a situation in which Kyrie kind of says the wrong thing in the presser, or there's something that goes. In this case, he was just such a supportive teammate. It's like he took whatever he could off of Doncic. It was awesome, man. It's a credit to people grow up, man. And maybe this is, he's learned a lot. He said he's learned a lot. And maybe this is what the next chapter, which will, one of the latter chapters of his career will be.
No, I think you're right. And again, if you look at Brooklyn when they were together, and let's also, there is a little revisionist history here with the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, the Brooklyn Nets were the best team the year that they didn't get out of the second round against Milwaukee. They had smoked Boston in the first round. They blew out Milwaukee in the first 2 games. Then Harden got hurt, Kyrie got hurt, and then Kevin Durant nearly beat Milwaukee anyway by himself. But I think at that time when it was all kind of falling apart in Brooklyn, what does it say about Kyrie? That he's the guy that made it back to a finals. Kevin Durant hasn't been in the conference finals, and look at what's happened with James Harden's career since he left. So I think if you were a betting man, you would think, it looks like it might be over for Kyrie. But Kyrie still has a lot of basketball left in him, and I noticed that same thing that you did yesterday. He was really supportive of his teammates. I think he wants to get back there again, and I think Dallas has got a really good front office. I've always liked Jason Kidd as a coach, and that's always an attractive market. The Texas market is attractive because there's no state taxes and things like that. And, you could still be a big star in a place like Dallas. So they have a chance. And I think Kyrie, to his credit, he kind of in a way reinvented himself. And I think he became a fan favorite again. I think he had a sneaker deal too. How about that? So he's all the way back on top.
Yeah, by the way, the Kyrie sneakers are actually pretty good. Frank, we love you. Oh, on the way out, I said one more thing about the train I wanted to tell you. Okay?
Yep.
This really bothers me. I was on the train today, and I saw a guy walking. He walked up and down in my car, back and forth once or twice. And he had a bunch of things on his waist that looked like, I don't know what they were, but like, to me, it looked like would be pocket knives, things of that nature.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, it looked like he had like a mesh backpack, and I thought he had nunchucks. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and those were all like instruments of some sort, and the stuff around his waist was something else. But then he goes and he's just standing there, kind of an odd-looking dude, and looking kind of with a furrowed brow. He has a guitar case, and then he has another big case that says Fragile on it, and he's just standing by his stuff staring. And I looked around for a moment, and I did not like the way he looked. And I got up and I walked right past him and said, "Excuse me," and I went 3 cars away because I'm like, this guy's giving, I don't like the Littleton, Colorado energy I'm getting from this guy. I'm walking away.
Did he look like Liam Neeson? It sound like a movie?
Not Neeson quality, but there was something I didn't like. And it just got me to thinking, how is it that you cannot get on a plane with toothpaste, but a guy... he just got on the train. There could have been anything in all the cases.
Right.
There's literally... Guys, at this point at which I'm worried, I think about it, I go, no one's even asked me for my ticket yet. There's not even a record of me being here. It just bothers me.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I've been on that train a couple of times coming back on a Friday night after I do PTI, and I'm on the 7 o'clock. And I've been on that train where I got bumped up to first class, where you could basically drink until you fall down.
Right.
And you know what? A lot of times there are politicians on that train.
Mm-hmm.
Tons of politicians. And you're right. The act, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't be saying it. Anybody you could jump on the train in D.C., then in Baltimore, Wilmington, Delaware, Philadelphia.
You can get on, you can get off. It's like planes are the only thing. We're just not a smart country, guys. I'm sorry, we're not smart. Anyways, I love you.
We should have better train service. My son, who travels everywhere, was telling me that in China they have a train that travels 1,700 miles, and you could do that in 10 hours. Like, shouldn't more people be taking the train to Chicago?
Well, our train system is just so slow. It's
because there's been times like with the Rangers where there's like weather, and I'm like, all right, let me just see what's the train to Pittsburgh. It's like 12 hours. Like, come on, what are we doing?
It's ridiculous. Exactly.
Yeah.
that should be like a 4 or 5 hour train.
It should be an option, right? Like driving shouldn't be the only option. Like I could drive to Pittsburgh quicker than that. Like it's just got to be. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be.
Frank, you are the greatest. We love you. Thank you for the time. All right, well, so long. That's Frank Isola.
Well, that's going to lose him. I guess lose him at the end.
That's exactly right.
I didn't hear the boop. But.
All your phone calls next. So many things to talk about, including we're going to go back to the Yankees and Mets in a bit.